Every once in a while, I'll be reading something in the scriptures, and it will remind me of a time when I read this as a younger Christian, and I remember how much those frightened me. Um, I don't know if you've ever had this experience or not, but I know that when I was a younger Christian, the idea of Jesus' return was always something that excited me, but it also worried me. Um, maybe maybe my experience was different than yours, but I always remember people teaching and preaching, and I'd go to a youth camp or something like that, and they would talk about how one day Jesus was going to return. It was going to be glorious and wonderful. But then they always also snuck in the things, so you better be ready, right? It's like, you better watch out, you better not cry, you better not pout, I'm telling you why Santa Claus is coming to town. It was that kind of mentality, right? Jesus is coming, and boy, is he ticked off. He's going to be ticked off at you. And so the return of Jesus was always kind of taught in that way to me. And I didn't understand all the glorious part because I was so afraid. Well, I was reading this kind of scripture through Thessalonians, these two books that Paul wrote to the church in Thessalonica, and most people think that these were among some of the earliest letters that Paul wrote, and they were written to a church that was really struggling with the fact that they were facing persecution, and some of the Christians, some of the believers were dying, and they thought that Jesus was going to come back tomorrow. And then when it was delayed, it was like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do with this? And so there is this great fear that was within that community. And so Paul tries to tell them, don't be afraid, because it is going to happen. God's going to come, and God's going to bring his judgment. And then the other piece of this was, and he's going to punish all those bad people that are treating you so poorly. And so their sense of hope was coming not only from the fact that Jesus was going to come back, but also that God was going to bring vengeance against others, those who were treating them wrong. And I'm reading that and I'm thinking, I can see how that would be an encouragement if you were struggling in things, but I don't know. There was just something that just didn't sit right with me about that. And I think part of what didn't sit with me was this idea of my hope is in the fact that someday Jesus is going to return, and Jesus is going to take care of all the bad things that are going on right now. And so, yeah, my hope is there. But on days where I'm really struggling, where things are really bad, that distant hope sometimes doesn't always give me the encouragement that I need in the moment. Jesus' return is going to be great, I've told and I read. But what about now? What happens now to encourage me? Yes, I might be able to find some sense of resolving that fear because of what's going to happen way off in the future, but sometimes it doesn't. And that's when I remembered, you know what? There are other verses that talk about God's presence differently. In fact, one of my favorite verses is Isaiah 41:10. Do not fear, says God, for I am with you. Do not be afraid, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and I will help you. I will uphold you with my victorious right hand. Now, I am with you now. And so, although it is good to find hope in something that's going to happen way off in the future, that yes, Jesus is going to come back, there is great hope for me now that God is with me now, and that God is encouraging me now. I think it's great. The talk of God's return someday is great. But maybe what's happening now, I need to recognize that God is with me in this moment, in this struggle. And that companionship, that idea of companionship now, is one that's going to give me a greater sense of hope and greater sense of encouragement. So for those people in Thessalonica, Paul told them what they needed to hear, that yes, in the future, God is going to be with you. And for that church, it was great encouragement. For us now, maybe that encouragement is going to be what carries you on as well. For me, today, in this moment, I'm so glad to hear this message. Do not be afraid, for I am with you now.